There is another famous person who helped blaze the Wilderness Trail to Kentucky. His name was George Rogers Clark. He was involved with establishing the fort at Harrodsburg. But the truly amazing aspect about George Rogers Clark was that he led a group of men to attack British forces in what is now Illinois and Indiana. The farthest western fort established by the Continental Army was Fort Laurens, and yet George Rogers Clark went way beyond that to attack British forces at Kaskaskia and Vincennes. We tried to follow the trails of George Rogers Clark, but it wasn't easy. Clark and his men used the rivers just as the Indians and French explorers had done. The question might be asked, why don't we ride the trails in Illinois and Indiana? We have a plan. We will do that when we cover the journey of Lewis and Clark. It just so happens that William Clark was the younger brother of George Rogers Clark, and they both grew up in the area near Charlottesville, Virginia. People might recognize Charlottesville as the home of Thomas Jefferson. We will have to wait until 1803 before Meriwether Lewis and William Clark begin their journey that follows the trail of George Rogers Clark in 1777. History can be very fascinating, and we can still follow the path of famous people today on cycling trails. In addition to cycling on historic trails, like this one from Philadelphia to Valley Forge, or this one along the Raritan River, we also enjoy going to reenactments that are generally held at or near the actual battle sites. Staying in a logical sequence of events, this next reenactment is for the Battle of Bound Brook, which originally took place in April of 1777. Now the reenactment takes place in the same location, which is on the main street of Bound Brook, New Jersey. It is an annual event that draws crowds to see what the battle was like. This turned out as a British victory.
Pleasure to see you, sir.
Right. Now that you've captured the city, what are your plans?
Go to Disney World.
As we left our last interview with General Washington, he remarked that the Battle of Brandywine was viewed as a British defeat, even though it was the Continental Army that had left the field. That battle took place in September 1777 and allowed the British to advance on Philadelphia from the south. The British eventually captured Philadelphia, and that is what forced General Washington and his Continental Army to Valley Forge during the winter of 77-78.
or sergeant.
We have almost reached the end of 1777, and yet there are a few more events worth noting. The Continental Congress, which had been in Philadelphia, wisely decided to move to Lancaster and then later moved to York, Pennsylvania. As the British began to occupy Philadelphia, there was a battle at Germantown, where the British prevailed. A British attack on Fort Mercer was repulsed, and yet the British did capture Fort Mifflin. By December of 77, George Washington had decided to winter at Valley Forge with his Continental Army.
Work off that cheesesteak.
Perhaps she took a break in Conshohocken.
That's right, 8 miles to Valley Forge.
There is another interesting postscript. It involves General Anthony Wayne. 10 days after the battle, the British launched a bayonet attack. It did not look like this. It took place at sunrise, and many Continental soldiers were killed. General Wayne later became known as Mad Anthony Wayne, continued to serve as a leader in the Army in many fierce battles, including some in Ohio after the Revolutionary War. If you have ever heard or been to Fort Wayne, Indiana, you can trace the history back to the area near Brandywine, Pennsylvania.
Can you see this deer behind me?
Certain leaders are remembered during this time, and foremost among them is Baron von Steuben. He brought traditional discipline to the Continental Army, and from that, morale improved. There were no battles here. The point of visiting Valley Forge is to remember the hardships faced by the soldiers in the Continental Army, particularly during cold winter months. There are many interesting people and stories from the War for Independence. Our bicycle rides follow the trails, but there is much more to learn.
This was Washington's headquarters.